tradition here. There's a Sudanese seminary that every stole they give out when someone graduates comes from here.
Oh, that's neat.
And we also got them self-sustaining because we built their bakery, which cooks bread. And it cooks so much bread for the community and the communities around it that it sustains financially the seminary,
Wow.
except for the wage of the cook, which we paid up until last year, I think, at a whopping $100 a month.
Wow.
Do we get interns at that much?
It's a blessing. Yeah. I don't know about that. And this-
Bernie called this week.
Oh, gosh. So 30 and 40 stoles every other year or so go out of this place. And their bishop actually, Bernie goes, their bishop doesn't have a pectoral cross. I'm like, here, take him this one. Got this letter on fancy, gold lamel letterhead. Thank you so much for the cross. I'm like, your letterhead costs more than the cross. Ready, Doug? Okay, so here we are at Concordia Lutheran Church, the Concordia Lutheran Church, and we're blessed today to have Rebecca DePort, the chair of the Director of Christian Education Program at Concordia University Irvine, the best of all the Concordias that aren't churches, second best only to this place, period, here to tell us about what it means to have a Director of Christian Education intern, and specifically one that she is recommending that we would consider taking on. Normally this process would start a lot earlier, but we're working it through as quick as possible. So part of that is a congregation meeting, and we will probably have one of our new fashioned congregational elders calling you to let you vote on it in the next week or so, so we can get it passed, because it does include expenditures of funds. However, as of right now, I'll give you guys just a little bit of a heads up. $30,000 has been donated towards this. We need a little bit more than that, but not all that much. So Rebecca, why don't you tell them what a DCE is?
Yes, great. Well, thank you for having me here today. I live out over in Tustin, so it was a nice little 20-minute drive. And don't feel bad. I know, Pastor, you said, oh, you got up so early with the time change. I was on a 6:15 Zoom call with a church on the East Coast, having me Zoom in to do this in between their worship services. So yes, it felt like 5:15, right? The time change. So I think that's why I was still yawning a little bit, but here we are, right? Here we are. So it's great to be here and to just reconnect. I met Pastor Dustin a few years ago at something at the district office. I believe his son was with him as well. And so when the opportunity, when placing my students for this next year and just wanting to have a unique ministry piece presented itself, then I was encouraged to call this guy up, and I was like, I know him. That's an easy connection that I can make. And we're Facebook friends. So that's easy, right? But back to why I'm here today. So I'm Rebecca DePort. I'm the professor of the Director of Christian Education program there, the director of that program. So I teach the courses, I supervise the fieldwork students, and I then get the esteemed privilege, the humble honor to discern where my students, after they graduate, get to spend 12 months on an internship for their LCMS certification in our synod. And so that's a great, wonderful process. The students lose sleep. I do not. I know that God is guiding this every step of the way, and so I can sleep soundly. However, with that being said, a director of Christian education can look very different from congregation to congregation, but essentially our training is to equip these students for congregational team-based ministry, working alongside a pastor to do everything from cradle to grave type of ministry. So that depending on the skill set and the passion area of that student, we teach them the courses across the lifespan, but they may be more specially tuned towards older adults or towards young children or towards that middle school niche. Or in my own experience as a DCE, starting out with parish education and youth and children's ministry. Then when I had children of my own, it was like a switch flipped in my head, and all of a sudden I wanted to make sure that nursery was spick and span and that we had proper attendance at work and things like that, because there was something new happening in my life that then realized the importance and the value of needing to have that prepared for other people with small children. Sure, I took a class on that when I was in college, but it really didn't mean anything until it was an absolute need and I could see it for myself. After serving in those roles, my internship in Idaho, my first call in Kentucky, and then Arkansas, the Lord called me into doing family ministry in Florida. And that also happened. I had 2 boys at the time, my own children, and working with teenagers for about 10 years, realizing that it didn't matter how much they listened to me and we would just be totally connected with these spiritual highs on weekends or Wednesday night youth groups, but they would leave the church and go to college and make their own decisions that were sometimes very disappointing for me to find out how they were choosing to make choices in their life. And through being influenced by other research and conferences and other leaders, that's when it really hit me that the number one faith formers in a child's life is the parent. And whether that's positive behaviors or negative behaviors, the parent, the guardian, the grandparent that could be raising that child, that teenager, is influencing them with a larger percentage than any of the touch points that I give them in the church. So my shift started to happen more into wanting to do more intergenerational ministry, more family-based worship opportunities, and tweaking the things that we did well at our church to be more inclusive to all ages. And so that then drew me to a call that was offered and I accepted in Florida, where 60% of the congregation's over the age of 60, but we have year-round residents as well, and really getting to put my skills to task and my passion in family life education, and then pursuing my master's degree in family life education. Well, little did I know that God was preparing me all these steps of the way to someday then return to California and instruct students going into DC ministry at Concordia University, Irvine. I didn't want to move back to Southern California. I had no interest or desire. So when Pastor said earlier in the message today, have you ever wanted to just, yes, there were plenty of times you want to just give it up and say, I'll do something else. But I could see that God was working through my life. I tell you all of this so that you can hear and understand that the formation that our students receive at Concordia Irvine, and specifically in the program that I'm directing them in as they've heard a call for DCE ministry, is that they've heard these stories and examples in all these places across the country. 2/3 of our program of students are from out of state. They're not local students that are then coming to Irvine. They're from other parts of the country who want to study in California, but then go back to the Midwest or the East Coast or Northern California or the Northwest. And so our program is very diverse, and it's a wonderful experience for the students in that process as they're continually shaped and formed throughout the experiences that they get in their fieldwork settings. And so as their sophomore, junior, and senior year of college, they put in close to 500 hours of fieldwork. That is more than a student teacher does in our university system. And these students start by observing and then being a part of leading. By the time they're a senior, ready for internship, they are like the second DCE at that congregation that's mentoring them. And so we work with about 4 congregations in Orange County, really close to Irvine there. And so they're involved in Sunday morning, midweek stuff, about 10 to 12 hours a week. Even with the pandemic, I insisted that our students be on campus so that they could still serve their fieldwork churches in the pandemic. Because I said, California is the most restrictive. You're going to learn the most with technology, with live streaming, with Zooming, with Bible studies, and you need to be soaking that all up, because wherever you are sent for internship and called to serve, the pastors kind of are going to expect you to know how to do this. Not just because your age is in the low 20s, and that means you just automatically must be tech savvy, but how to put all this stuff together. And so it's been much of a learning year with the pandemic, with our students still actively engaged in their congregations here in SoCal and putting in 10 to 12 hours a week as seniors, in addition to their coursework, and if they have on-campus jobs or on-campus ministries that they're leading. And so I share all of that for you to know that as I have developed wonderful relationships with these students for the last 4 years, I've only been with you maybe like an hour and a half. And so I'm just trying to get you to build a relationship with me and to trust God's process and that discernment of matching a student with a congregation one that can meet the needs that you have in your church and the variety of ministry opportunities that you have already in place, and the dreams and maybe ideas that they could bring, that they could meet you at the table with to grow and flourish here in Cerritos, but also what your church can do to help mold and shape one of our interns. As we're looking for healthy, functional congregations to give them a strong launch into full-time church ministry. Of course, with that, I have to say that your church probably helps put the fun in dysfunction, right? Most of our churches, there we go. I knew this guy right here would say.
That's what deacons are.
Right here, the deacon puts the fun in dysfunction, and oh, everyone's hearing that. There we go. But part of the intern process as well is that you would have the option, if your congregation felt led and blessed to do so, to extend a call to this intern to remain at your congregation following their 12-month internship. And so that is a part of the process, but it's not an expectation that we have of you. We are just, like I said, we're looking for places and pastors and teams that can surround this intern and give them a healthy launch into their full-time church career. So for that, I say thank you for being interested. Thank you for being open to pursuing this opportunity that I've put before Pastor Dustin a few weeks ago. Part of the process as well is the student is going to communicate to me on a weekly basis with a report of kind of what's happening, where they're spending their time, where they see God at work through them, how they're growing through those opportunities and experiences. We have some expectations of the pastor to fulfill during that time, which is essentially to be regularly communicating with this intern and providing feedback and direction to the areas of ministry to make, to, you know, kind of check the boxes off that job description, so to speak. So you have a job description that you'll be sharing with me this afternoon of here's what we'd like the intern to do, and then there's all this other stuff around it that we're saying, go forth and explore. But here in the box is what we'd really like the intern to focus on, and the outside the box things are those extras that they can put their time into, or maybe their skill set could help develop. And so that's where that matching process connects. And each student is different. Each of the 10 students that I'm placing to begin this summer have different skill sets, different personality styles, different spiritual gifts, and all of those things that we've explored and been developing through growth plans and through experiences in their fieldwork over the last 4 years. And so this is the time I love to visit on a Sunday, so that I can see the entire congregation and interact with people that I might not get to visit with if I just came for lunch with these two guys, and really get a better sense of the entire culture and the family feel of your congregation. So this student is also returns to us the end of January for what we call a mid-year reflection conference, and that is a time where we work with the students and our placement office in helping them discern their first call. So they will be making a decision at that point and communicating to the university. Yes, I think my internship is intending to extend a call to me. How do I accept that? What does that look like? Or I don't think I want to stay. I don't feel it's a good fit for me. How do I finish well? How do we move forward? And then how does the university work with that congregation to either supply another intern or to help you look for a call within the synod? And so we have all these pieces, or there's also the other option, the church saying we're not going to be able to call the intern, and us helping that intern, again, finish well and move on and transition. And so that happens fairly quickly, about the first of the year, and because the university is responsible in the synod in helping students, whether it's teachers or directors of parish music or DCEs, in taking their first call after they've met all of their requirements. So our students from Concordia Irvine graduate with a major in theological studies, and so we are housed in the School of Theology, which is pretty awesome compared to some of our other sister institutions with DCE programs in the Concordia system, where those DCEs are housed in the School of Education. Now, what that means is that the Irvine graduates come out with a strong knowledge of theology. They know their stuff. They're sitting in classes with gentlemen going off to the seminary, Lutheran teacher students, directors of parish music, and also deaconesses. And together, they're already forming that team relationship of multiple church work roles, working together, studying together, and to be honest, the DCEs kind of set the curve in their theology, okay?
I didn't do my undergrad.
There you go. I know. I'm like, that's not a bash on pastors. It's just something I'm very proud of because our students take their work and their roles very seriously. And so they know their theology, and then we have the DCE courses with the education spin that helps them take the head knowledge to the heart and how we live that out in our lives. And that really is the essence of DCE ministry. So whether it's focusing on Sunday school education, development with the home, preschool chapels, outreach to families, kids' night outs, event type program things, we really want to focus on that relational piece because it's not just about filling our calendar and doing activities, it's about building relationships and walking with people where they're at in their life and helping them continue on that journey for Jesus. So our focus and emphasis really is relational. And so it could be youth ministry, it could be mission trips, it could be adult Bible studies. The young gentleman that I've talked to Pastor Dustin about spent his senior capstone project on an adult Bible study. And it pretty much got shut down in the pandemic last year. Then he graduated in December, and then we did not have an internship site for January of 21. So he graduated actually December of 2020 and returned back to Northern California and is working and is in prayer and just excited about his next step for internship. So I'm super excited because I have more sites than I need, but more importantly, I've got new sites that God has connected me to that are better fits for the students than some of the churches that applied and met the February 1st deadline. And so that's where God's work is really generating the enthusiasm and the excitement of drawing out and connecting these opportunities for our students to serve, but potentially for your congregation to be blessed in their service. So I'm sure I have other things I could add, but it's a good time for me to open it up to questions. Who has got a question out there? Or online, I suppose. They could ask a question online. Okay, yes?
So I was very intrigued last week when Pastor told us about the potential intern coming from the Bay Area and having such rich cultural experience and background. So if you could tell us a little bit more.
Yes, so this student is from the Bay Area, and I'm a little more sensitive this year to a couple of my more, ethnic students that have communicated a desire to be in a place where they will be welcomed and they will feel comfortable. And so that is what encouraged me to connect out to Pastor Dustin and your community here at Cerritos. That's not ever been a concern in the past, but things have changed in our world, and there is a desire for just more of that comfort. This student specifically says, I'm happy to, I'll go to the middle of Oklahoma if that's what you would like me to do in the Midwest. However, he says, I want to be a part of a team and a community that is just ready to learn and ready to support me in growing in my ministry too. And that just really resonated with me when I met with him Thursday, because my conversations with your pastor, I just have this feeling that he's really good at helping mentor and raise people up and lift up people in the church. I don't know. I mean, we're going to find out.
Don't judge him by me.
Okay, I will.
Judge him by Chris and some other folks.
Okay.
I came in, seriously.
So that's part of those pieces. So he would fit some of the demographics, and I know your pastor has shared with me about some potential opportunities that were very vibrant in the past that could be brought back as opportunities for the future. With different cultures in this area, but also just that diversity that would be very welcomed in your setting. Also, he has musical gifts, and so I believe plays keyboard, piano, and is...
I can go on vacation.
He's not interested in coming in and taking over, your music in that regards, but he'd love to have the opportunity to add to and be part of in order to share his gifts in worshiping the Lord as well. So I see that as a great opportunity because not every church has that need or is open to, I don't know if we could meet that for someone. So I think that it would be a great fit for you as well. This young man was a transfer student to us, so I believe he's probably a little bit older. I think he might be like 23, 24 instead of 22. That's too old, right? Okay. I'll go back to a 22-year-old, right? And so he's excited. He is a very loving, kind soul. The best way for me to also share more information with you is to let you know that when the sites are revealed to our students and announced on March 26th, then I go into my office, click send on an email, and Pastor Dustin will receive a link to a Wix site that our students have created that has some pictures of them, some descriptions of their philosophy of ministry statement, some of their personality profile results, some images of them leading, and you can see them, or some videos of them, for him, like playing music. And so you'll get to know your intern quite a bit before they even arrives. But we do that intentionally so that you can see that, share that, put it on the screen, and begin to welcome and pray for his beginnings with you.
But up until that point, it's blind.
Yeah, until that point, it's blind. Our
To them,
students,
too.
yeah, the students do not know that I'm here. They do not know what the options are. They have no idea what is before them. And for that, it truly is a preparation of following their call and their vocational calling in ministry, rather than the location that could be calling them. That's a vacation, right? We're talking about what is your vocational calling. And so, as you've heard, where I've served across the country, so have my students. And they come to me in the fall of their senior semester. I kind of do a pre-interview, like, hey, if there's going to be an engagement coming or something along those lines, I'd really like to know before we get to February and March and I'm making decisions. And then you say, oh yeah, by the way, I got engaged last night. Well, that could change everything on where I might need to place you. So we're all clear in that front, for this student especially. But moving forward into the spring, in a week from tomorrow, they begin their theological reviews with some of our theologians who you know well. And the students are really nervous about this because they feel like it's going to be a grilling. And no matter what I tell them, it's going to be a conversation. You're going to be fine. Middendorf, Eschelbach, Stigmeyer, you name them, Parks. I mean, we just keep going. And you're going to be fine. They're nervous. It's about an hour of questioning and making sure that they know their theology, every law and gospel, commandments, the creed, the catechism, hypothetical situations, scenarios that could happen, or be approached by if you're approached by a preschool teacher in the parking lot about, what's this business about infant baptism? Can you explain that to me? How would you answer that scenario? How do you give context to it? So they go through that theological review, and then they're gold starred for the next few days, as I've already glued all the pieces in place for who's going to go where. Part of that process is, again, just letting the Holy Spirit realign for me and confirm what I've already been thinking, which student has kind of come to the foreground. And as I said, the pieces are in place at this point, and we're just waiting to put the layer of glue over the puzzle and lock it in. That's kind of where we're at this point in our year, because we're, 2 weeks left, right? Yeah, 2 weeks left. So, of course, there's things that could shift, but I'm feeling very confident that the Lord has already revealed to me where the best matches would be, or the potential options for them. And it's a very exciting process because they have no idea where they're going. And when they do meet with me, what I love to hear is when they say, Professor Duport, send me where it's the best fit. And I say, yes. We have developed and formed this student for their ministry as a minister in the Lutheran Church, because that really is what it's about. Even if we don't want to take a call somewhere, we know God's calling us there, and He provides for us. I did not want to move to SoCal from Florida. We were good. We were fat and happy, 10 minutes from the beach. We were very happy, but we knew God was calling us back to Southern California, and every day I am reminded, this is why I'm here. I love my job. I absolutely love my job. I just didn't want to relocate. Again, it's about your vocational calling and not the location, right? Trust me, there's days I wish I could run from California and get out of here with my kids and my husband. but this is where God has called me to serve, and he's blessing me as I do. And so that is the process of preparation for full-time church work, and especially as we emphasize that to our DCE students at Concordia Irvine. This is the end of their education, their training, their coursework, their hours of field work, and this 1 year of internship is the final certification piece for the Synod. And so it's an exciting adventure, and it's one that you will learn and grow, and the student learns and grows, and that's our intention in putting those pieces together.
Hank had a question.
Was the intern, was he raised a Lutheran, or did he convert when he came to Concordia?
He's been a lifelong Lutheran, is my understanding of him, yes. And just knowing how he's done in his courses, yeah. He had pre-knowledge.
One thing, we don't have sinkholes and alligators here.
That's true, or humidity. Yeah, no humidity. You take the good with the bad wherever you serve, right? And my husband and I are both originally from Southern California, so we knew exactly what we were coming back to.
And you
but-
still came back.
And we still came back. We resisted, but the Lord was telling us otherwise. We've been here 7 years.
So where would you say his heart lies in terms of the realm of what is he most interested in?
You know, I asked him that question. That's a very, it's an affirming question that I already typically know the answer to. And when I spoke with him on Thursday, what's been interesting is that he's had to go back home. You know, he had to go back home in the end of December, and basically has been moving back in with parents and getting a job and whatnot. And I've been able to see, and we've kept touch over these last few months, because that's important to still keep him on my radar, is I was very encouraged by his responses. It was almost like, who am I talking to? Like, you've really grown and developed away from campus. So it was great to see how God's still working through him. He didn't just go home and become a slug and watch Netflix for 3 months. And so that's exciting, you know, being involved with his home church and getting more actively engaged with the ministry opportunities there. So his first reaction to me when I said, so just, you know, help me understand, like, let's re-clarify, let's reset the marker. And his response was, Duport, I am just ready to serve wherever God is calling me, whatever he wants me to do. So he's had experience with kids' church and Club 56 for 5th and 6th graders, and leading adult Bible class, and having very positive responses from his pastoral supervisor and the DCE that he field worked with. The district president has seen him in action at his fieldwork church and leading, you know, doing kids, children's messages and adult Bible study, and he gives thumbs up, you know, too, so for whatever that's worth. So he's seen him in that context of leadership, the character and conduct. He's not an out-of-the-box crazy guy.
We've got enough of those.
Yeah, you got that box checked. But once you get to know him, you see a different side of him. So I'm able to spend retreats with these students. I take them on fall retreats. We typically do a Mexico mission trip every spring together and build houses through Pastor Ramon Contreras down there. And this student has been actively involved in those opportunities as well, leading the worship time for us either in Mexico or on retreats. And so I've spent a lot of time with him, even though he was a transfer student. He was very actively engaged, very involved in his home church and his youth ministry at his home church, being a part of national youth gatherings, and serving with his DCE that mentored him and therefore encouraged him to go into church work. So he's had a lot of key influencers and different roles that he's had in the San Francisco Bay Area, working in a summer camp, which is a huge ministry out there where many churches come together and do a summer camp. He's been active in those leadership roles as well.
One thing that has come to the forefront of me is that we're very interested in starting a youth program, and because we basically don't have one. But my question has to do is, how is he dealing with old crotchety people? Because that's basically what
Oh,
So it sounds like I need to have him come in and do some reconciliation with you, right?
that's been 13 years in training.
So the students have courses in children and family ministry, youth and culture, because the culture is always shifting, so that course is always different when we teach it. And then they do have a course in adult ministry. And when they're in the adult ministry course, that covers young adult ministry, women's ministry, men's ministry, also singles ministry, and older adults.
Geriatrics.
We don't call it that, no. So I like to teach my students that with the older adult segment that we have 3 categories. You have the go-goes, the slow-goes, and the no-goes. And so learning that there are 3 different sectors of ministering to those categories. It is its own preschool class, really.
Exactly.
They're just older. They like some of the same types of things, but maybe delivered in a different context. And so when students get put into those settings, when they take that course, and they're forced to, the requirement of the course is to teach different things or have different one-on-ones with older adults to hear about their perspective. So tell me what ministry was like when you were in your 20s or when you were in your teens. So helping the student gain perspective. Many students come from that and say, oh my gosh, old people are cool. Yes, old people are cool. But they might not have ever experienced that coming from high school into college or high school into a young adult world and transferring to college. That typically is their main sphere that they want to dig into because that's where they were called to ministry, was at that age. And so we really try to push and stretch them to grow in children and to grow in adult ministry because that's where they have the least amount of exposure and experience to. Children happened a long time ago for them, and adults is what's in the road ahead. And so when they get to delve into that in field work, it's really kind of cool to see the light bulbs go off. Everything from, these are the 2 most popular, preschool kids are fun, and old people rock. Those are the 2 statements I hear all the time. I go, yes, I know, I told you, but they have to experience it themselves. So opportunities to connect the intern in those settings, to have them be part of what's currently happening, or even in a small group or a friendship group of adults, it just helps them become more comfortable. The third thing that we hear a lot of from our students is, I just don't know how to talk to the parents. I know, so we have an assignment for that, right? And so they're required then to teach in the fall just a simple course about social media awareness. And I say, why do we do that? Because it puts an audience in front of you, whether it's preschool parents, school parents, interested parents of the church. It could be grandparents, it could be everybody, but it gives you, this is your platform. You know this as a 20-something, and we are all sitting there as parents eager to hear what you have to say. Be the expert on youth culture. Be the expert on media use, because that's what you know, and right away now your foot's in the door, and people can say, oh, wow, you were very articulate in how you spoke about that. I had no idea about this. Could you help me learn about X, Y, or Z? Or maybe you could lead a Bible study on Revelation for our men's group, and then you're building relationships. They come back from that and go, wow, the parents really didn't know anything. And I can say as a parent myself, you're right, we really don't know anything when it comes to social media. We're trying to work, pay the bills, take care of our family, feed our children every day. We don't have time to look at their devices. So by you partnering with the home and the church and the home working together to raise their children, you're helping equip parents on some things that they just don't have time to look into. You're helping them be aware broadly of some dangers, concerns, or some more healthy habits to form for their child with their devices. But by doing that, you then look at the intern, and I tell my students this. The people in the pew look at you and go, okay, you kind of know what you're talking about. I think I might listen to you on another topic. But it's a foot in the door, building relationships. So we do that their senior year of field work, and wow, magically the rest of their senior year as a fieldwork student, where they're kind of the second person in command in those ministry areas at their fieldwork church, those relationships are just clicking. And so that's been a very healthy process. and one that we started a few years ago is I kept hearing this. I don't know how to talk to parents. Boom, boom. And now we're seeing a different relational response. And then also I say to them, you've got something right in your basket ready to do when you start your internship. You know, start off with something you've done before. And so just trying to build their confidence. And again, not having a lot of opportunity to speak to other adults when they're teenagers or young adults. That's something new. It's something they're not typically comfortable with. You're not their peer group. And so we try to expose that to them in field work, build their confidence so they're less intimidated when they come in and start in their ministry capacity as an intern. So it's exciting, like, to see all the formation. Yeah.
I've got an online question
Okay.
from one of our people.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Do
then
you
we'll-
think our intern would be a good fit in developing a Bible study or other means for growing and educating new Christians? We've got a good, faithful base of lifelong Lutherans in our church family to welcome and love, but we could use something more formal where a new Christian feels like they are encouraged and assisted in growth beyond our new members class.
Yeah, I think that any ideas that you guys have of what an intern could do for your church is great to be funneled through the pastor so that the intern's not getting 18 different to-do lists or job descriptions. And so this relationship with Concordia Irvine is that we are partnering with you through your pastor to be that regular, consistent supervisor for the intern. So any type of ideas, dreams that you have, I would encourage you to take to the pastor, even while the intern's here. You take it to the pastor so the intern's not getting one of these. You know, every Monday you come in and you've got to, I think you should do this. You take it to the pastor because the pastor will be aware more of where their time is being spent, how they're spending that time, and being able to then prioritize, and he knows the bigger needs of the congregation to then filter that and work together with the intern in developing some of these ideas. I think that's a great suggestion, and one that I would say as a major in theology would have some new insights. Obviously not to a doctoral student, right? But would have some new insights and would be passionate to want to share what he's learned in a new setting. And so that's a great idea. Yes. We've got two here. You have one?
Yes, so regarding the relationships with the family, what about sensitivity to and/or proficiency in other languages?
This student does not have any other languages in his wheelhouse. He chuckled and he says, nope, I only know English. And so he says, and my parents remind me all the time, you only know English. So anyway, I clarified that on Thursday. Yeah. You have a question? That was your question? Yeah.
Because there's many languages spoken around here.
Yeah, there is a, raised in California, whether Bay Area or SoCal, there's exposure too much, or exposure to many things, exposure to many languages too much. But there's, from him and one of my other students that's desiring the same type of assignment, their personality is, they said, I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to try, I'd be willing to do my part.
So even though he's second or third generation of his background, he has no,
Correct.
do his parents?
I believe so,
So that goes back to the sensitivity too.
yeah.
So
There is sensitivity, yes, yes. Yeah, this is new territory for me to explore in placement only because it's, as the student and I joked on Thursday, he says, I don't want the ethnic piece to be the reason why I'm put somewhere. And I said, well, if I've offended you, I really apologize. He says, no, I'm not offended. It's great to kind of know a little more than you normally tell someone. He said, but because we've just ran our program that everybody is together. We've not, looked at each other differently, even though we look different in the class. So he's not my first ethnic student to be placed by any means. But it's the first time that with a multiple amount of students that there's been a collective concern with what's going on in our nation to just want to be in a community where they would maybe not be the only one that looks different. Which is,
we're so
Correct. Correct. So in case you're not aware of the ethnic lack of diversity in the LCMS, other parts of the country with applications that came in, I looked to Dustin. I said, I've got a great student. He's very talented. He's ready to grow. He would do well under your type of leadership and your pastoral care. And is this something your church would be interested in? That's what brought me here. Yeah.
In case you didn't know, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod outside of California is
Yes.
something like 96% Anglo. And that includes Texas, which is probably the second most diverse
Yeah.
area to us, but it's something that us in California are trying to teach the rest of
Yeah.
the nation.
When I look at a church application, and I've got across the country, and it says for their percentage of their ethnic population, and you go through and it's 90s and 80s, and then it'll say Asian 2%. I'm not gonna put any of my students in that type of situation, especially when it's been expressed this year. Never been expressed before, but yeah, it's a different year. I'm trying to be sensitive to that too, for their comfort level. Loneliness is the biggest, we should say, Satan is present through loneliness in our interns. Internship year is a lonely year because they're not living on campus, they're not around their friends, they're in a new community, they don't know where things are, they don't know you. And so I think your role as a congregation and being extra friendly, especially in a pandemic where however you're comfortable exhibiting that, helps an intern feel comfortable and able to focus on their calling and their position, and rather than that loneliness and I don't know anyone here and it's isolating and why am I going into church work? So that's where Satan attacks our interns, is through loneliness. So whatever you can do, some students on internship this past year families would deliver a pizza to them and they would Zoom and have pizza together, over Zoom and have meals that way, or they would kind of be out in the parking lot, weather permitting, and do takeout at a distance. And so there's been some really creative ways that people have connected and welcomed our interns, even in the pandemic. And so we will pass those ideas on when pastors on campus with us in April to meet the intern in person before they begin for an orientation, where we walk through more specifics on the role of the congregation, the role of the pastor, the role of the university, and all the to-dos with that.
There was another online question of what language and culture is he able to work with and has?
He can work with anything. Yes, and he can work with anything. He's not seeking a specific demographic for ministry. So his field work was at Christ Costa Mesa. So there you go. That's not, a Chinese ministry or a Hispanic ministry or anything. It's Christ Costa Mesa. So it's got its own diversity. It has a school, has multiple staff, and he has served there well for the last 3 years in building relationships and serving there, and was welcomed there, very much welcomed there. So. Yes.
All right, so he's in San Francisco area now. Does that mean he's going to have to find a residence here and regular additional employment, or?
Well, so the internship commitment for you is that you would provide housing for them, and that also through that, our recommendation is that the congregation, because cost of living is different in Oklahoma than it is here, the application says 60% of a first-year DCE salary is what we're looking at for an internship, because it is not like a business internship where all they do is bring pastor his ice water every morning or a fruit smoothie or a coffee, but it is truly a residency. And so they are living and serving in that community. They are finding opportunities to connect the church to the community and to be part of what's going on. So they are graduates with a bachelor's degree. They are living and serving in your community. And so you're providing housing for them, a one-bedroom apartment, or maybe a member in your congregation has an option for living guest house or renting a room. And if that's something the church wants to explore, I would need to see if that's something the student would be comfortable with, because oftentimes this is the start into their full-time church ministry career. They could be staying beyond that if you chose to call them. So having them established in their own apartment is our recommendation. There are some other churches in the area that will be taking on an intern, and I've spoken with Pastor about this. There could be the possibility of having those two interns share an apartment. And just so happens, those two boys have been roommates together. They have no idea this could be coming. So see how God is good. That can help out two churches when sharing the cost of housing and be a blessing for all. So that is the financial commitment for this. The reason why we set the 60% is because we're looking at congregations that hopefully have the financial means to then, if they wanted to make up the difference of 40%, they could maybe make up that gap in their budget process to have a full-time staff member, as opposed to just not being able to afford it at all. So there's a lot of wiggle room as we are approaching this in the non-traditional way. And there's some areas that we see could be cost savings and areas of flexibility that we've been in discussion with to make it work.
To give you a rough idea, I figured the number out, it's $33,600 roughly is the 60% of district scale. But there are other costs involved too, like making sure that they have gas for their car, which, your pastor doesn't turn in gas receipts, but there are people that should be able to get receptive, or some money for materials, because unlike Susan and myself, not everybody develops their own stuff. So there are some other costs involved. Right now, we have $30,000 promised of it, so we do need to come up with some more. Tom and I and Hank and Lorene worked on the budget, and I had one math error, and when Tom caught that, as of our present budget for next fiscal year, we're about $3,000 in the black if everything works out. So some of us, if we could add in a little bit more for this, it would be a blessing. Again, the idea of finding a roommate or something like that is something that would be beneficial, because we all know how, we're driving by a place the other day in Fullerton, not in Cerritos, and the two-bedroom apartment in Fullerton was $3,400 a month.
Oh,
Here it's $4,000. That's okay. Huh? Yeah.
Where is this other church? So where would be an area that's in between?
I'll share that with him when we're not being recorded.
Yeah, I know where it is. It would be about a 20-minute drive if they could find one halfway between the two. We've already talked about that, and I know where it is, but that doesn't mean it won't work out for somewhere else either. Or if someone has a room that they're interested in renting, or we don't want to rent the old studio at the Jennings Marisette residence, or you could give them one of the cats.
That solves the loneliness issue, right?
It does.
Okay.
But yeah, that's something we'll have to examine fairly quickly. If this works out, like I said, we'll need to vote on it soon, but then we'll have to turn around and be ready for somewhere in May for the student to show up, probably.
And their start date is mutually agreed upon with you and the student. So, we suggest May 15th to August as the starting zone. And so you can say, oh, we really can't onboard you until July 1. And then the student says, okay, because they can't really negotiate anything else. So you do have some control in what would be workable for you.
But that's part of the process too. So yeah, there's still a lot of questions in this. And normally, if we had thought of this and thought we could have pulled it off, we would have applied for this like back in September and October. This all came about in the last 2 weeks. So it's a good opportunity, but it's one we have. Other questions? Let's see, anything else online? Not yet.
Okay, I'll ask a question. You said he's concerned about looking different or something. I'm going to ask you, what ethnicity is he?
Well, he's not concerned about looking different. It's just more, I have 3 ethnic students that I'm placing this summer. And so it's a matter of, one was very vocal to me, saying that I just want to maybe not be the only, non-Caucasian in the church or the community I serve. And I thought, that's fair. That's a totally fair statement. And I wouldn't do that anyway to a student. And so it really is about, we're going to pray that God provides the places for our students. Just like when I have a student who's highly musically gifted and is able to come in and wants to be, part-time praise worship and youth ministry, I don't have the time to go out and doing what I'm doing with you guys and like really developing a site for all 10 students. It's really like, okay, Lord, provide the places. Provide the places with that February 1st deadline that our synod uses, and we make matches and fits. So when those applications came in and I started to delve through and have conversation and dialogue is when I realized that I did not have what I was comfortable with for those 3 students. And that's what turned me right to my backyard and said, it's time to have some conversation. What relationships do we have? Where can we see if these are open doors? And so God has been good. It's not a coincidence that God's been good through that.
We're being recorded and it's going out on YouTube, so there's some issues there. But I can say it this way. The ethnic background of the student is one that's predominant is one of the 6 or 7 major ethnicities in our community. And I think that's fair to say. But to go more detailed than that, considering it's online, is not.
Fair. I mean, you have to be pretty different to be out of place in this community.
Yeah, I don't have any students with 2 heads, so we're okay. Yeah.
I used to do the language census for the local school district, and we had up to 79 languages.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like there's diversity or us.
79 languages.
Just in ABC Unified?
I mean,
That's this town, the next town, and what used to be a town. That's
Well, and that's-
75,000, 80,000 people.
That's why I'm excited about reconnecting with someone I met a few years ago and then be able to just explore the possibilities. And if the doors continue to be open, then we follow, we walk through, we trust the Lord in that process. So if it doesn't work out, then, I relook at my pieces and relook at where things can go. So I know you're not desperate, I'm not desperate, but we're seeing this as a great opportunity to just have dialogue. So, yeah, that's a great tidbit. I love it. 79 languages.
And here comes Pastor Timothy. This is our,
He also speaks 79 languages.
associate pastor
Great.
of and primarily responsible for our Mandarin
Okay.
service.
Great.
Is it that late already? Wow.
Yeah. Time flies.
Any other questions? Well, let's pray, and then you guys can all go to lunch, and Pastor Timothy and I will stick around and talk to the director a little longer. Let's pray. The Lord is with you. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this opportunity. Guide our church as it looks at it. Lord, guide Rebecca as she works with all these students. Lord, help us to find stuff that will help our families and our community. And find ways to draw them to you. Lord, thank you for this time and this blessing. We pray it all in Jesus' most precious name. Amen.
Thank you for coming.